Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, who is from Gift of the Givers, and they're getting involved in the response, the humanitarian response. Believe it or not, this has triggered a humanitarian situation that does need to be responded to. So, Dr. Sooliman, we've been watching. The focus has been on violence, the loss of life, the destruction of property, and now the subsequent shortages that are being created in the value chain, in the economy. Where exactly do you see the gap in terms of humanitarian responses, and where are you starting with your responses?
Good morning, Thulasizwe. There's different levels of intervention. Number one, we go for the low-hanging fruit. Basically, on the first day on Monday, everybody was fine. But by the end of Monday, the calls started coming in. The calls are basic. We need bread and milk. Because remember, everybody's food supply is not over within one day. Everybody has bought at the beginning of the month. There's some food supplies. So nobody will starve over the next several weeks. So people do have food. What they need support with is basic milk and bread. And here I must say, the support from South Africans as South Africans has been incredible. And that first day and second day and the first few days, that kind of support of bread and milk has been brought about by individuals. I remember, because of the circumstances, every suburb has now got its own defense system where the roads are closed, all the roads are blocked, and those are checkpoints where food is dropped off. And calls are made on chat groups and say milk is available, bread is available. We have been supporting that process also. We'll be buying milk and bread. And whilst we're saying that, we need people to understand there is no need to panic. Even though a lot of food companies have been destroyed, production companies as well as wholesalers, as well as shops that sell it, food is available in KZN, except that you have to wait in queues for a long time. But to bypass that, organizations, individuals, companies, people, groups are making items available, baby milk powder, bread, milk, other food items, to take the pressure off people going to the supermarkets. So the less people that go to the shops, the faster other people can get support in those shops. So that process is also underway. There are companies who have stockpiles of food which we can purchase and procure and deliver. So we are doing several things. One is immediate bread and milk to individuals, bread and milk to communities, bread and milk to healthcare workers. Remember, hospitals have got 2 nurses per ward now. Because of the difficulty of the strikes and no taxi and no bus service and the anxiety and the fear, staff couldn't come to work. So we can't have medical personnel now waiting in long queues to get items, even though they can afford it, because they need to run the hospital. So yesterday we delivered 150 food parcels, not milk and bread, food parcels to a hospital in Pietermaritzburg. I'm not going to give names. I'm not going to give areas. I'm not going to say how we're doing it. I'm just going to tell you what's being done. And then we've got the calls from hospitals in Durban, which we are processing that. And then smaller communities and bigger communities also, we've been packaging food parcels, having them ready. Non-availability of medical supplies, because right now 70 pharmacies in Durban have been destroyed. 2 big wholesalers have been burned down. A big the manufacturing facility has been destroyed. So you're going to have a massive shortage of medical supplies for all citizens, whether in public or private hospital or even in communities. A lot of surgeries have been destroyed. A lot of optometrist rooms have been destroyed, more than 50. All those kind of people are going to need support. So we're putting a group of people together to assess the medical needs in terms of medical supplies for the whole of the province. And from there, we will support the funding.
Dr. Sooliman, I doubt we will find a South African who can question your patriotism and your heart for this nation and your commitment to this nation over, decades, really. I'm wondering, to what extent do you believe that the humanitarian response also provides an opportunity for lines of dialogue between communities that at the moment have had a situation where there's been tension, some of it racially based tensions that have started to rear their ugly head once again. I'm wondering if this also opens up a corridor that while this work is happening, but also conversations about, trying to get a grip on things can actually get going.
About that. We've addressed that issue. We've spoken about it. Humanitarian response is in a response to a cause. It's cause and effect. And racially disturbed, or racial tension can add more drama to humanitarian, where you create more humanitarian responses. So you want to avoid a situation where you have the effect. Every time you have an effect, you have to have a response. So we are trying as far as possible to avoid needing to have a response. And to do that, you need to deal with the root cause. Now, I'm addressing all South Africans in general. You know, yes, racial tension has arisen in certain areas, but that has happened as a result, as a consequence of what has happened on the ground. And when emotions overtake you, anger overtakes you, and anxiety overtakes you, sometimes you're not in control and you're not thinking clearly of what's being done. And that is the danger when you're faced in situations of threats. People on the one side loot, on the other side people respond. Sometimes the response is far greater than the looting is, and people die in the process. But that is not indicative of the sentiment or the approach of every single individual in those communities. By far and large, the relationship has been very good. The relationship can be mended in everything. When we had the TRC, when we spoke about the past, we spoke about forgiveness, we spoke about the difficulties. South Africans are very forgiving people. Yeah. And they understand that these situations happen. But what's important is for community leaders, politicians, premiers, president, everyone to speak to the people, to say, you know what, this has happened, and to calm the situation down. And even communities and religious leaders within the different groups have to do that. And by far, look, as we've been experiencing the week, a lot of groups, all different communities are standing together, exactly preaching that we are all one. Yeah. We can't allow what has happened to divide us and make us fall.
And I suppose as a parting shot then, Dr. Sooliman, let me ask you to share from your experience, your vast experience in working in humanitarian projects and seeing the impact of conflict in a number of countries. In the wake of all of this, part of the conversation has been the question of whether or not we have people in our society that stoke tensions, that want to sow divisions and to even widen divisions where they have existed. Because let's face it, we have had a situation in this country where tensions have existed. It's not like we once we've had in the last 27 years or so a situation where we achieved harmony within our society. But you have observed what conflict can do to a number of countries. I remember you took me to countries such, I went along with you, for instance, to Somalia, and what we saw the impact of conflict was there. When you hear people celebrating violence, as some sectors, some people in society have done over the last few days in South Africa, calling it, you know, a just anger of the people or seeking to justify it, what would you say is at stake here for democratic South Africa with all its flaws?
Those people don't understand what war is all about. There are no winners in war. Nobody ever wins in a war. It's only total destruction, loss, and hurt. And the sad part is that your family, your children, your grandchildren, and the great-grandchildren are going to pay the price of your folly. It shows a total lack of leadership. It shows lack of spirituality. It shows no care for the country. It shows no patriotism. That kind of language is the language of people who want to be dictators, who are oppressive, who want to destroy power, self-aggrandizement, who want to enrich themselves, and use ordinary people as fodder to achieve their own ends. Those people, let's be blunt and say it like it is. Those people who looted, how many days is their food going to last them for? 4 or 5 days? And let's be more blunt again. A lot of black people have been involved. And who are they going to hurt? They're going to hurt black people. They're going to hurt their own families and their own communities. If not years to fix up what has been affected. They're going to lose their jobs. And already a lot of people say, you know what, this is not good. You may have food for 5 days or 7 days. But what happens after that? If you have a job, we have lost so many jobs in this country. Let's take, for example, if Walmart decides our stores have been badly hit and we decide to close down in South Africa, that's a loss of 100,000 jobs. And if 5 people are looking after that one person, there's a loss of 500,000 jobs. What did we achieve? We achieved food for 5 days and we lost 500,000 jobs. If other companies decide we're not going to rebuild other stores where we've been destroyed, we're not happy what has happened. If Samsung says we're not going to reinvest in a plant in Durban, in Nandi Drive. If Surplus says we're not going to rebuild in Mobeni, what's going to happen? In the long run, we've been used for somebody else's ends, and they're going to promote their own thing while we're going to harm ourselves.
Yeah, Dr. Imtiaz Sooliman, thank you so much, and I'm glad I could get you to tap into that aspect as well from your vast experience assisting in humanitarian situations and conflicts around the world.